All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This channel brought to you by our friends at Connors and Ferris. We want to thank you for being with us today. It's closing in on the NFL draft. So I've been working on my own mock draft, and some guys do every team, every round. God bless you. Go ahead. I'm going to stick with the Buffalo Bills and what I think they could do for this week. So as we get started, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Dan, Jenna, myself will be on here. And keep in mind, coming up on Wednesday, the night before round one of the draft, we're going to be live here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel, the three of us answering your questions, going over all the different ways the draft could go. We're going to do that Wednesday night to get you ready. That'll be from 7 o'clock. We'll go to about 8. We'll be answering your questions and comments. We want to know what you think. We're going to tell you in total what we think. Dan's got some ideas. Jenna's got some ideas. But, it's time for me to get my mock draft going. And I'm going to get started. So we know where the Bills are in this draft. They have 6 picks coming into this. They don't pick until 27th in the draft. And you all know there's only 31 picks in this draft because the Dolphins lost one because Tom Brady was being Tom Brady. So let's get into what's going to happen in this draft. I think the Bills do want to address offense. Brandon Beane said the other day, we don't go into it that way. I believe that. I believe there are ways they could still take defense in the first round if the right safety or linebacker is there. But look, they need a pass catcher. We know they do. The way things have transpired over the last 12 months, there was a lot of hope of Gabe Davis really taking that step. Doesn't mean Gabe can't have a big year this year. He can't bounce back. Maybe with some different things going on in the offense, maybe he will. But you've got Stephon Diggs, and then I think you've got a gaping hole at that number 2 spot. And I think they're going to look for a guy, and I think they're going to look for a guy who can be a long-term solution as a pass catcher for this team. You're drafting him in the first round. You expect 5+ years out of the guy easily. So here's my thought. They're waiting in that round 1. They're seeing the way it goes. I think the wide receiver market starts right in the late teens and the early 20s. So you've got some teams up there. And I'm going to go back to the movie Jerry Maguire, when Jerry Maguire's buddy is the other agent. And at a certain moment, he says, this isn't show friends, it's show business, or something to that effect. This isn't about friends, it's about business. And I think the Bills know, Brandon Beane knows, that his buddy Joe Shane is sitting ahead of him and could be taking a wide receiver. So here's what I see happening in that draft. As the draft starts going, you've got teams that could be in the market for wide receivers. And I think Zay Flowers could be the first guy off the board. This is just my thought as I've seen some of the mocks and heard from some of the teams. If I'm the Bills, and I'm not big on trading up when you have limited picks. Last year we talked about how many guys could make this roster. That's BS. Rosters are big now. Guys can be on your roster. So settle down. Sometimes people think 7 guys can't be on this roster. You make the right picks, they're going to hang around. That's not what we're talking about here, but it's hard to give up picks. It takes away some of your maneuverability, too. And the Bills only have 6 in this draft. So here's what I'm saying. We get to the 23rd pick, right? Minnesota Vikings are on the board. I think the Bills could have a deal right there. And the reason I say the Vikings could be a team that moves back, because I think the Vikings are interested in taking a quarterback, and Hooker out of Tennessee is a guy who has been linked to them. So when you look at where they are at the 23rd pick and you start thinking, would they make that moves? And take a look at the teams behind them, between them at 23 and the Bills at 27. I don't think they're really worried about the Giants or the Cowboys, etc., taking a quarterback. I don't think it's happening. And I think we're down to maybe the last quarterback to go in that first round. So I think there's some incentive for the Vikings to maybe move back the 4 spots. So here's what I have. I have Brandon Beane jumping ahead of his friend Joe Shane with the Giants and making a move. The Bills trading the 27th pick and also giving up the 91st pick. In exchange, the Bills get the 23rd pick. That's a first rounder. And they get number 119 in the 3rd round from the Vikings. So you're moving up in the first round to get your guy. You are certainly losing space here. If you do the numbers, and you guys know there is a number associated to each value of a draft pick, it comes out just about even, almost exactly even. So it's a move up, a short one in the first round, which obviously there's the most value to get your guy, and then a move back and losing out on number one, but still maintaining a good second day pick at 119. And I have the guy that I'm taking is Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC. I think he fits for this team. I really unfairly a few weeks ago, I had looked a little less diligently at Addison because I thought he was going to go earlier, and I think he still could. And I think that's why the Bills would make the move. But he is ultra productive. His year as his third year in playing at Pitt, when he played with Kenny Pickett, was incredible. 100 catches, 1,593 yards, 17 touchdowns for the Pitt Panthers. He ends up at USC, and you would think with Caleb Williams, maybe the numbers would be good. They had a lot of weapons there. His numbers weren't quite as good, but the guy is a smooth route runner. He's quick. He was a track guy. He's got that ability. He's got that confidence. Honestly, he's a little lighter, but he does remind me a lot of the way he plays, the way Stephon Diggs plays. And I'm not worried about duplication. First of all, I hope Diggs is around for a while, but you never know. There's just a lot of chirping that goes on down the line. At a certain point, you want the best player you can get, and you'll find a way to get the ball in their hands. At least that's the plan. And I think this kid can be that guy. Again, he's 5'11", 174 pounds. He's not running over anybody. Diggs is 20 pounds heavier. Phenomenal player. Been a great Buffalo Bill. I think get him out there with Diggs and Gabe Davis and give Josh Allen that weapon. And I know it's given up something here. And I wasn't big on trading up, but I think it's a relatively small price to pay to go out and get a guy. And I think he thinks his buddy could be going for him. The Giants are in desperate need of wide receivers. And I think they could make that move late in the first round. And I think it moves the Bills ahead of competition there. So, I like Zay Flowers a lot. He's even shorter. That kid can really play. But I think they're going to look at the board as it goes. And my thought would be the Vikings would be an outstanding team to trade with because they have value you can get back. And they're not going to have to move back that far. And you jump ahead of other teams looking for wide receiver. So again, I've got Jordan Addison, USC wide receiver, going to the Bills with the 23rd pick in the first round. The Bills trading their first rounder, 27, and the 91st overall to get the 23rd overall pick, take Addison, and also get 119. Now, second round. Bills have 59. I think they stay there. And you always look for fit, right? And there are guys that a lot of people believe they could be taking, and there's a lot of different ways they can go. But they've got a need at linebacker. And I know there's been a lot of talk about Jack Campbell, the Iowa linebacker. I think he's going to go earlier. I mean, some thought of the Bills even taking him in the first round. I guess that could happen, right? If they stayed there and they didn't have the receiver they wanted and they think he's filling in, I think they'll know he's gone by 59. I had seen some projections of the Bills taking him there. I think he's going to be gone by then, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I like Fitz. I like to see the guy. He's got all the physical tools that you want. He's in the right spot. It was funny. I think even Beane and McDermott joked about trying to match anybody up to the physical tools that Tremaine Edmonds had. I mean, it's off the charts, at least in terms of that goes. But I got another guy who's a different kind of athlete, and I have the Bills going with him with the 59th pick. It's Trenton Simpson, the linebacker out of Clemson, somebody the Bills have talked to, they've met with. He's considered a guy that's got great range, can cover guys coming out of the backfield, cover guys coming from that tight end position. He's a hitter. They tried him in more of what you would consider the stack role, a traditional role, and maybe his play went down a little bit at Clemson. He's still highly productive. I think he's that kind of guy. There's questions about whether he's a great fit in zone coverage. I've seen that. I've also seen people think he's got a bigger frame. He's not Tremaine Edmonds. He's a little bit more like Milano's size. But I think you've got two guys who can run, two guys who can hit, two guys who can make plays there in the middle. I think he can be, maybe even beginning to get him acclimated in that more of a third down role linebacker, because you're talking about taking him in the second round here. But based on what I've seen about him, I think sitting at 59 and getting a linebacker that I think fits much better than Terrell Bernard. And I look back at that pick, unless something really changes, and that was a real reach for the Bills there and for Brandon Beane. Maybe Bernard becomes something else. Honestly, there's times I see Terrell Bernard, and I think he can play in more of a hybrid safety role. Not kidding. He just seems smaller, and I don't know if he can get bigger. This is a guy in Simpson who's 6'2", and he's bigger, stronger, and I think he would be an outstanding player for the Bills in the 59th pick. And now they traded down, right? So now we move to 119. And look, there's one position that Brandon Beane talked about pretty openly when we spoke to him the other day, of a need of young players. And I'll say depth, but he mentioned defensive tackle and defensive line. And it's funny, with all the draft picks the Bills have made, the Ed Oliver thing just is glaring at the moment. Going into that 5th-year option, could there even be even a draft day deal involving Ed? I don't know. It appears that Ed's going to be on the roster and playing on that 5th-year option. And I think he's obviously still a good player, but you're talking about going long-term. You're talking about getting a guy as part of that rotation. They've tried to do it with a guy like Tim Settle, and I don't think it was productive. And they've had issues in the interior of the defensive line. So I have them at 119 taking Zacch Pickens, defensive lineman out of South Carolina. Taller than Ed Oliver, a little bigger. I think with his frame, he could put on a little more weight. Not necessarily a bull rusher. Then again, Ed Oliver is not that guy. Smaller in the interior. I think he's got versatility. And I know sometimes we'll talk about versatility means maybe you're not great at one thing. I think he's got the ability to play inside and outside in this defense. He's quick at the point of attack. He's shown that versatility. He's been productive there. He spells his name with 2 C's, so everybody's going to have to remember that. Zackch. Zacch Pickens, I have him. Defensive lineman for the Bills, filling a current need and a future need for this team. And you're hoping you're getting a guy there at 119 that can develop and be on the roster and playing week 1, and because of the need, and also being a future guy for them. So I've got the Bills going defensive line at 119. So now, so far to recap, we've taken Jordan Addison, a wide receiver, taking Trent Simpson on defense, taking Zacch Pickens on defense for the Bills. I'm going back to offense with pick number 130. And Dan Fates always says this: there's nothing the Bills have done in free agency that should make you shy away from any position that they could pick. And this one really physically might be a duplication to what they just picked up on the roster. But Deontay Hardy isn't going to keep me from making a draft pick. And I've got the guy at 130 that they're taking out of Houston, Tank Dell, wide receiver. And he is something to say. It's kind of comical that a guy's got a nickname Tank when he is 5'8", 165 pounds. But you guys know how much the Bills crave separation. They can get it from their wide receivers. And the scouts talk about it's separation from the moment the snap happens with him. He just has that innate quickness and speed and agility to get open. Of course, he doesn't have a big catch radius. When I look at his negatives, it lists as catch radius. And he did have some drops over the last couple of years, but he's been an electric player, a touchdown maker. He can get open. Josh Allen can get him the ball. I think he's a guy that can get on the field right away for them. I know they've met with him too. Again, I know they signed Deontay Hardy. We're not talking about guys that are long-termers for the Bills. At least that's not the initial thought. Can Hardy help them? Yes. Maybe it would take a guy like Tank Dell a little while to get going, but I love the speed and the electricity that he brings to the offense. It gives 2 weapons for Josh Allen out of the first 4 picks from the Bills. 2 wide receivers, 2 guys who can take it to the house, 2 guys who can help Stephon Diggs keep coverage away for him, 2 guys who can also at different times help with Gabe Davis and his more of a third option for the Bills at wide receiver. So Tank Dell is my guy for the Bills at the 130th pick. Now they still have the pick 137. And when you get later in the draft, I mean, there's sometimes you pick guys that you believe they're going to be teams contributors, they're going to be backups. They think he can be those guys, right? I mean, good example of that guy's DeMar Hamlin, who then became a starter. They took him later, and then there's guys who become starters like Dane Jackson that you take in the 7th round. This guy, I think he's got really high upside. He's had some injuries. He's well, here's who I'm giving you. At 137, I'm going with tight end. And I'm going with Zack Kuntz out of Old Dominion. And this guy is a physical beast. He is a giant. He is nearly 6'7", 255 pounds, and he's an athlete. Not necessarily a burner. Not necessarily a guy that, you're thinking he's a basketball player, and he can run and beat the seam and take it 60. I mean, if you can get that out of tight end, God bless you, go get the guy. He did absolutely nothing at Penn State 3 years there. He was more of a special teams guy, virtually non-existent in their offense. And then he went to Old Dominion. Okay, good program at Old Dominion. He played a year and 5 games because he played as in 2021, he had 73 catches. Again, you better dominate when you're playing for Old Dominion if you're thinking about being an NFL player. And he did. And then he came out the next year, was off to a decent start, and then he got injured and didn't play the rest of the year. But in total, at Old Dominion in 18 games, 85 catches, 836 yards. Not a dominant blocker. It's hard to find those guys, even in the draft. Tight end for the Bills, they don't play a second tight end in the offense because, to be quite honest with you, they haven't had a second tight end usually worthy of getting playing time there. But this guy with his, he's nearly 6'7", and scouts say he has good vision to block. Blocking for a tight end is about effort too. When you're out there in the field, he's got size, he's got a decent frame. He's only 255. He can probably put on a little bit of weight. You don't want to lose it. He's considered raw, but considered a really good athlete. I think when you're taking a guy in this position, you take a guy with upside, and he's got upside. And I think there are times they'll play 12 personnel. But, Dawson Knox has missed some time too. And they've never really felt great about what they've gotten out of another tight end. And so I am going to go at the 137th pick with Zack Kuntz, the tight end out of Old Dominion. And then at 205, and this is the last pick. Now, that doesn't mean Beane's not going to try to make some moves, maybe add another pick. I think they'll be very aggressive, as they usually are in the undrafted free agent market. But I went with a defensive lineman this is sort of a project, and it's a guy you take a flyer on. But I took Caleb Murphy out of Ferris State. Again, we're going Old Dominion and Ferris State here at the end, but they always will say this about players. And I just said it. You have to dominate against lesser competition to be even thought of truly to be a NFL player, right? You have different reasons why you ended up with inferior competition, at least in terms of the level of play. Ferris State's a Division II program, but man, Caleb Murphy put up numbers. 25 and a half sacks his final year. He had 14 and a half before that. He's probably the kind of guy who could have transferred, gone somewhere else for his final year. I think he actually, if I read this right, he might have even had another year of eligibility. He didn't really play a lot of football. He went to earlier programs, and he didn't think he was going to have a shot to play. He was an athlete, played other sports, played basketball. He's smaller, but he's got potential to be at least the way he's projected, as a guy you bring off the bench as a pass rusher, bring him in obvious pass rushing situations. And that's, you got to figure out how to scheme guys. But if you got a guy who's got that quickness, you've got a guy who's got a nose for the quarterback, and you're taking him with a 205th pick in the draft, I'm going to take my chances. So when you get to that point, look, We're staying away from specialists. They're not taking a kicker. They just re-signed their kicker. Please don't take a punter again. They don't need a long snapper. So and I'm not taking a young quarterback, not doing that. I don't think there's a need to for right now. At some point you will. I think you're better off with Matt Barkley on the practice squad than you are with a kid. So sometimes in those rounds you do it. I don't think they need another running back unless they were going to go super high with one. I don't think you need another running back. I think they'll probably sign an undrafted free agent, maybe be a practice squad kind of guy. They've got enough backs on the roster. This is adding not only depth, but some quality to the wide receiver room. And it's also getting you a potential starting linebacker, at least another linebacker to be on the field and getting him where it is. So to recap again, Jordan Addison with the first pick after a trade with the Vikings. Trent Simpson, linebacker, 59th pick. Zacch Pickens to get a defensive lineman out of South Carolina at 119. At 130, the speedster, the quick guy, Tank Dell to help Josh Allen. Zack Kuntz, a giant tight end who can eventually give you more into this offense, potentially, and then taking a flyer on Caleb Murphy out of Ferris State with their final pick. So let's see what happens. Initially, I thought maybe trade him back. And then I thought, you know what? If the guy is there, sorry, Joe Shane, let Brandon Beane jump ahead of him and make that pick and take him away from the New York Giants. So let's see what happens. Again, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm reaching. Let me know if you don't like the picks. Tell me who your picks are. But on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we will have our preview of the draft. We want you as part of it. It's live at 7 o'clock. So Jenna, Dan, and myself from 7 till about 8 o'clock the night before the draft. So that's this Wednesday here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. That's going to do it for me right now. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I want your comments on what you think and who you think they can pick and what you think about Brandon Beane being aggressive in that first round, moving up and getting his guy. That's going to do it for now. Please check us out the next time on the Buffalo Plus channel on YouTube.